Good evening. Welcome to our Municipal Council agenda for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I will move to the land acknowledgement statement. The town of East Gwillimbury recognizes and acknowledges the lands originally used and occupied by the First Peoples of the Williams Treaty First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. And on behalf of Council, I thank them for sharing this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as East Gwillimbury's closest First Nation community and recognize the unique relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and we join them in these responsibilities. On our agenda, we are down to item D, and that's deputations, and there are no deputations this evening. Item E is presentations. There are none at this time. Item F is committee recommendations, and I would like to ask for a mover and a seconder. Start with our Committee of the Whole recommendations. Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers. Be it resolved that Council adopt the Committee of the Whole Council recommendations from the meeting held on June 6, 2023. All those in favor? And that's carried. Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was another recommendation that sought out ratification for tonight from committee's meeting this afternoon, and that was in relation to the CIS report for the York Region's Municipal Streetscape Partnership Program application. I can bring that up onto the screen before you for Council's consideration.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, it also has come to my attention that when we were in CWC and I was chairing under Development Services, we had a memorandum regarding Sunday gun hunting. We received the memorandum, but we didn't address the resolution that was to request that the minister approve the gun hunting. There's a resolution that we need to pass in order to make that notification to the province. So I'm wondering if we might consider raising it here or discussing it, or I'm happy to bring it forward. But we didn't address what was in the memorandum.
Correct. Would you want to do it now or at the conclusion of our evening?
Well, we're ratifying what we did earlier this afternoon, so I thought I might bring it forward here so that it could be ratified or brought forward here for a vote.
Do you have the paperwork there?
I can bring it forward, and
Thank you.
I'll have it ready in a second.
Sorry, just bear with us for a minute.
Madam Mayor, it was, the draft resolution was in Appendix 1 of the Development Services Memorandum. Be it resolved that staff advise the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, MNRF, to add the town of East Gwillimbury to its list and map of Ontario municipalities that permit Sunday gun hunting.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Procedurally, can that be a separate motion rather than part of everything else? Thank you.
Madam
Sure,
Clerk.
certainly. So through you, Madam Mayor, perhaps Council would want to entertain the motion that's on the screen before you. That's just in relation to the report that was presented earlier, and I'll bring the other motion up after.
Thank you. So, have a mover to seconder, please. Councillor Johns, Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the second motion is on the screen as well. I'm just formatting it. Apologies. So this was built and embedded into the staff report that Council considered this afternoon.
Yes. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor LaHaye. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we have opposed? Yes, we did. Thank you. Please note.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, for the people listening at home, can you state the the number when you vote? I had a resident call me this afternoon saying that she's listening on the phone and she doesn't know what the vote is other than carried. So is it possible to say, all those in favor, that's 5 against?
Thank you. I will do that. Poke me if I don't. We normally don't, so it's, yeah, just
close ones.
very good.
Through Madam Mayor, those are all of the recommendations from the June 6th and the June 20th. You're now under item G1, which is your adoption of minutes.
To adopt the Committee of the Whole minutes from the meeting held on June the 6th, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor LaHaye, all those in favor? And that's carried. The next one we have is the minutes from our regular meeting held on June the 6th, 2023. Be it resolved that council adopt the council minutes from the regular meeting held on June the 6th. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Crothers, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. And one more, to adopt the council minutes from our... Okay. Item H is our statutory public meeting. Members of the public, this portion of the council meeting is a statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input on a planning application received by the town prior to a full technical analysis being conducted by our staff. No decision to approve or refuse the applicant will be made here tonight. There will be presentations from both town planning staff and the applicants on the development application. Following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposals. Submissions can also be made in writing. It's very important that the town receive the names and the addresses of individuals having an interest in these planning applications. If you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any future council meetings concerning the application being considered, you must provide your contact information to the clerk. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have a right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Land Tribunal. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town before the bylaw is passed. The tribunal may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect to an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded for storing and broadcasting on the internet. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information is being collected and maintained for the purpose of sending correspondence relating to matters before council and creating a record that is available to the public in hard copy format and on the internet in the electronic format pursuant to Section 27 of the Municipal Freedoms of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions about the collection of personal information should be directed to the town clerk. I will now ask the General Manager of Development Services to begin with the presentations.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call upon a member of our planning team, Andrew Clark, who's going to provide the planning context for this proposal. Some of the members of council may not had an opportunity to meet Andrew. He is a new member of the planning team, and I'd like to share that last week he celebrated the graduation from his Master of Planning and Urban Development program.
Good to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. It's nice to see you all and meet you all tonight. Yeah, as Margo said, I've been working as a planner at the town for approximately 2 months now. So for this evening's statutory public meeting, I'll be providing you with an overview of zoning bylaw amendment application 21.02, which has been submitted for the property municipally known as 22314 McCowan Road. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are located on the west side of McCowan Road, north of Boag Road. The proposed development site has an approximate area of 50 hectares and wraps around an existing estate residential subdivision to the west and south, which received final approval in 2002. The subject property consists of the retained lands from the existing subdivision and is currently vacant. The west side of the property consists of an open field, and the central and eastern portions of the property consist of mature forested lands with a water body that's currently being used as a stormwater management pond, along with an associated watercourse. And just for everybody's reference, development is being proposed in the north interior side of the property, then a forested area that fronts onto Manor Ridge Trail, located between two existing residential lots municipally known as 31 and 23 Manor Ridge Trail, and can be seen in the yellow star on the slides. Next slide, please. The subject property is located within the Greenbelt Protected Countryside and has an overlying official plan designation of environmental protection area and an underlying designation of rural area. The subject lands are located within the town-wide and Greenbelt Natural Heritage System and contain natural heritage features that have been identified through the application process, including a wetland and woodland. Official plan policies that apply to the environmental protection area and natural heritage system are intended to protect key natural heritage and hydrologic features, while policies for the rural area are intended to support agricultural and agricultural-related uses, along with uses that generally support agriculture and complement the town's rural character. Next slide, please. 22314 McCowan Road is currently zoned rural on the west side of the lot and environmental protection on the central and eastern portions. Our records indicate that the environmental protection zone was implemented as a condition of the approval of the adjacent subdivision in 2001. Developments being proposed in the environmental protection zone this fronts onto Manor Ridge Trail, which currently permits agricultural, conservation, and forest management related uses. So therefore, a zoning bylaw amendment application is required and has been submitted to request that a single residential dwelling is permitted in the proposed development location. Next slide, please. The application proposes to rezone a portion of 22314 McCowan Road from environmental protection to estate residential exception zone within the Town of East Gwillimbury zoning bylaw 2018-043. The point of this application is to facilitate the construction of one single detached dwelling and permitted accessory residential uses in an area of the lot with frontage on Manor Ridge Trail, and the proposed zoning is intended to be consistent with the lots in the adjacent subdivision. Next slide, please. So as seen from the submitted site plan, the proposed development involves one residential unit in the form of a single detached dwelling, along with a covered porch and veranda structure and an attached 4-car garage. And primary vehicle access is proposed through a driveway that leads to Manor Ridge Trail, which is the primary access road used by residents in the existing subdivision. Next slide, please. Planning staff have conducted a preliminary zoning review of the property. The proposed development currently complies with all requirements for the estate residential zone except for the minimum front lot line setback of 15.0 meters, where 13.74 meters is currently proposed with the intent to help minimize disturbance impacts to the forest. This deficiency is being proposed to be addressed as a site-specific provision through the proposed zoning amendment. Next slide, please. Staff also wanted to highlight policy concerns that have currently been identified during the review of this application with respects to impacts to key natural heritage features. Section 3.2.5 of the Greenbelt Plan does not permit development or site alteration within key natural heritage features in the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System, with the exception of very limited uses that relate to conservation, infrastructure, and resource extraction. Next slide, please. And so this policy requirement is very similarly implemented in the town's official plan and is even more restrictive when permitting infrastructure works. Next slide, please. Staff's primary concern stems from the fact that the proposal involves the construction of a new residential dwelling within a potentially significant woodland feature, which was identified as a candidate significant woodland in the applicant's environmental impact assessment based on applicable provincial criteria. And a significant woodland is considered to be a key natural heritage feature under the Greenbelt Plan. So as a result, it is unclear at this time if the proposed development will be able to conform with the applicable policy requirements of the Greenbelt Plan or related policy that governs significant woodlands in the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System. Next slide, please. So the second submission of the application is currently under review by our internal departments and external agencies, and we expect that a third submission will be required to address existing comments that have been provided by staff and the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority to date. Based on comments received to date, several matters have been identified that will be addressed in a future recommendation report to Council, including consistency and conformity with applicable planning policies, the appropriateness and compatibility of the proposed development with its surroundings, the ability to mitigate impacts to identified key natural heritage features, ecological compensation measures that could be provided to the satisfaction of staff, along with the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, along with any financial implications that may be incurred by the town. Next slide, please. So planning staff have also received 6 written comments from the public circulation at the time of delivering this presentation. Most comments to date have opposed the application, and a petition signed by approximately 48 residents in the adjacent subdivision has been submitted to oppose and deny the application. Several concerns have been raised, including the type of housing that's being proposed in terms of its design and overall affordability, the proposal's impacts on surrounding property values, impacts to adjacent properties and the existing road from construction activities, the proposal's compatibility with the existing subdivision and its ability to be subject to the same conditions that other properties must follow from the registered subdivision agreement, ecological impacts from disturbing the existing woodland feature with emphasis on existing regional environmental issues and the importance of protecting forested areas for their various benefits, the appropriateness of proposed planting compensation measures given the structure and features that exist within the woodland feature, and also future decision-making issues that could arise by establishing a precedent supporting the removal of environmentally protected land in the town. We've also received one comment from the owners of the existing aggregate facility to the northwest of the property at 22481 Kennedy Road, requesting that a warning clause is registered on title and included on all offers of sale, purchase, and lease that could arise from potential impacts from dust, noise, and truck traffic that are associated with the aggregate operation. Next slide, please. Staff will undertake a technical review of the application, including discussions from today's public planning meeting, and will continue to comprehensively review the submitted zoning bylaw amendment application prior to bringing a formal recommendation to Council in the future. Next slide, please. And so that will conclude staff's presentation for this public meeting. I'd like to thank Council and all participants for your attention, and I'd also like to note that the applicant will be delivering a presentation that describes their proposal in more depth. Thank you.
I'll now ask the General Manager of Development Services to begin.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe it's on number 3, which is presentation from applicant and agent at this time.
My apologies. Mr. Rogers, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Andrew, welcome to planning. Some applications are easier than others, but they're great ways of meeting your neighbors, that's for sure. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and residents from the neighborhood. My name is Brad Rogers from Groundswell Urban Planner, and I'm here tonight with Brad Baker from Burke's Natural Heritage Consultants, and we're here on behalf of the owners of 22314 McCowan Road. The meeting tonight is to discuss, as Andrew said, a zoning bylaw application for the property to permit one detached dwelling. We have been working on this planning application for 2 years, so it has taken a while to get here and to do all the environmental work that was necessary so that we can talk to you about this tonight. Next slide, please. As Andrew mentioned, the subject property is kind of a leftover remnant, regular shaped property with frontage on McCowan Road, and there is frontage on Manor Ridge Trail. The property is west of McCowan Road between Ravenshoe to the north and Holborn Road to the south. The property is currently vacant with an agricultural field to the west and a heavily treed area to the east. The size of the property is 123 acres in size, and it wraps around the existing subdivision at Manor Ridge Trail. This particular property, being 123 acres, is a lot of record that legally permits one residential dwelling. The question we all need to think about tonight is, where is the recommended location for one residential dwelling on this 123-acre property? Next slide, please. As Andrew has mentioned, the official plan designates the property environmental protection and rural. And the rural area is found at the west end of the property. Next slide. Similar to the official plan, the zoning bylaw for the property, this is a dual zone property. It has both a rural zone, RU, to the west, and an environmental protection, EP zone, to the east. Next slide. So this is where we have proposed the dwelling, and the blue area is the LSRCA mapping, and the blue area is significant. It's regulated by the LSRCA. The proposed dwelling that you see there has a gross floor area of 4,500 square feet, and it's being proposed at the edge of the subject lands, and it has frontage on Manor Ridge Trail. We believe, and our environmental consultant believe, that the location of the proposed house is the most suitable location within the environmental protection area, and this is based on the environmental work that is done by Burke's Natural Heritage Consultants, and Brad will talk to that. With the LSRCA, we have calculated the limit of disturbance for the property where the house will be constructed, with the provision for restoration, edge management, plantings, and fencing to protect the regulated feature. The rezoning application is only applicable to the limit of disturbance to allow for the proposed dwelling. The remainder of the property would remain untouched, EP, and this limit of disturbance has been reduced to 0.6 of an acre. Next slide. So this is a drawing again with the proposed home to illustrate how it would fit into the context of the existing subdivision. Next slide, please. These are some of the perspectives of the proposed dwelling. Next slide. The elevations of the proposed dwelling. Next slide. What we wanted to do here is to illustrate the option of placing the home in a rural area and what that would mean with respect to the driveway that would need to be constructed and the home within that rural area on the west side. And so those are the two options that we looked at. And it was determined that the environmental impact would be far greater due to the length of the driveway, which is almost 800 meters long, 10 meters wide, And the disturbance would be almost 8,000 square meters versus 2,800 square meters in the location that we have recommended. So I wanted to let Brad Baker talk about some of the environmental work that he has done, Madam Mayor and Council, and then we are pleased to answer any questions that you may have or members of the public may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, my name is Brad Baker. I'm from Burke's Natural Heritage Consultants. So we've been involved in this project for a little over 2 years at this point, and as Brad Rogers pointed out, we're looking at a situation where the property is a lot of record, and from a natural heritage perspective, we're looking for how to permit a development with the least potential impacts to the natural heritage system, the natural heritage features and functions associated with the property. To that end, whenever I get into a situation like this, I consult immediately with the Conservation Authority to ensure that we're not going to run into a situation where we're going to be proposing something that they can't support. We met out on site before we ever began doing our work to look at the various locations, and we decided upon a scope of work which was approved by the Conservation Authority to allow for appropriate consideration for the natural heritage features on the property. We know that there's provincially significant wetland to the south and extending onto the property from the south. We know that this woodland is a huge woodland that extends in multiple directions and is known as the Big Woods Policy Area, I believe. To that end, we did our surveys, and the functions, features and functions associated with property that we determined within that area around where we're proposing the development were other wetlands. We have wetland associated with the forest just to the west of the property, west of the proposed location for the home. That was staked with the LSRCA to ensure that we weren't going to be in or in proximity that we would be impacting the wetland. We have candidate significant woodland that is not mapped as significant by the county or the municipality, but it does meet several criteria to be considered significant woodland by the criteria laid out by the province. And there are a number of wildlife habitat functions associated with the woodland that we have pushed the development away from. Some of the wildlife habitat functions would be potential bat roosting in larger trees that we've moved the home away from. And as a result, this application has gone through multiple iterations with a smaller and smaller footprint to the area that they would be allowed to clear to ensure that we're not impacting those functions. I note that I called this a candidate significant woodland because from my perspective and in my direction from the province, I'm not in a position to call a woodland significant or not. That is the responsibility of the county or the township municipality. So I provide that information as other consultants would provide that information for the municipality in review of their official plan or natural heritage system, at which time the municipality and or the county would designate those as significant. So the intent of me looking at this from a provincial perspective is to identify what features would qualify it as candidate significant woodland and ensure that whatever we're proposing would not remove those functions such that the woodland would not be able to be called significant in the future should it be determined that it needs to be. To that end, we identified that size, woodland interior, proximity to other habitats, linkages, and water protection were the functions that would qualify this as significant. And as outlined in my EIS, the application would allow this development to go forward with no impact to any of those. To that end, we also included mitigation. The municipality and the Conservation Authority are asking for offsetting planting to take place, which would require trees 1.5 times the area that's being removed to be added to the Big Woods Policy Area. To that end, we're working on a planting plan at this point that would allow for 1.5 times the area to be removed to be planted in trees that would be adding to the function of this woodland in another area on the property or adjacent lands. I'm happy to answer any questions should they arise.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the presenter at this time? I'm not, sorry, go ahead.
Through you,
Councillor
Madam.
LaHaye.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. For the Brad Barker, I have a question. Yes. Through you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the environmental studies that you conducted, could you expand upon what types of studies they were with relation to what animals or aspects of the environment and what the results were?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the ecological impact study was scoped with the Conservation Authority. We do a 3-season vegetation survey. We do ecological land classification. We did a migratory bird survey, and we did amphibians surveys. So that means we were on the property for three 3-season amphibian surveys. We're listening for calling amphibians to determine whether or not there are rare species of amphibians, frogs, on the property, and numbers of amphibians that would qualify for a significant wildlife habitat, because there are certain groupings, numbers of species that if we were to hear them on the property, that would identify that area as candidate significant wildlife habitat for woodland or wetland amphibians. Bird surveys we would be there 2 times in June to listen for birds that would be nesting in the area or using the area for breeding. And the intent of that is to listen for species, again, that are rare or endangered, because we have a number of endangered species that are present out in that area, not on the property, and or species that would indicate significant wildlife habitat. So again, this is a fairly standard survey that we use to determine what species are present in the overall area and how they're using the property. The vegetation surveys that we do are looking for rare, threatened, or endangered species of plants that would be present on the property. There were 3 species that were considered rare provincially, and those species would be moved to another location as agreed upon with the Conservation Authority. So that's kind of a standard thing with species that are considered to be rare. They can be transplanted to other areas of the forest and not impact their ability to thrive in that woodland as a whole. These aren't species that you wouldn't find anywhere else. They're fairly common species within the East Gwillimbury area. They're considered rare by Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority for their watershed, and that would be species like black walnut that we see fairly frequently, or in this case, sharp-lobed hepatica, which is a small herbaceous plant that we would be able to move fairly easily. Ecological land classification, then beyond that, is the last part of it, where we map the wetlands, forest by ecotype to, again, determine whether or not we suspect that they would be habitat for plants or animals that we would expect to be present in the area, be those threatened or endangered or rare.
Councillor Crone, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll direct it to Mr. Rogers, if I might. I just want to be real clear on this piece of property. The way it is now, it is permitted for the applicant to build a house.
Correct.
On the property, but it would have to be in the rural zoning near the back end of the property.
Correct.
Okay, so that's non-debatable. They can build. We cannot deny the applicant a driveway as well.
That's correct.
Okay, so even though it would have to go through environmentally protected land, we really don't have any control over that.
That's correct.
Okay. And so, just so that I'm clear, your proposal is, instead of having all that environmental disruption, you're proposing having it closer to Manor Ridge Trail?
Yes, because there's frontage on Manor Ridge Trail, and it's the edge of the area. However, it is in an environmental protection zone, which means we needed a rezoning application,
Yep.
which we consulted with your staff 2 years ago about, and the Conservation Authority about, and we all concluded that if it can be justified through an EIS, then it can be supported, correct?
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, if I may direct a question to staff. Go ahead. The piece of property that we're talking about, because it's, a good portion of it's environmentally protected, it's also on the green belt, I believe. So my understanding, and I've heard this concern from some of the residents, and so I want to make sure we're crystal clear on this. That property cannot be subdivided or turned into another development subdivision. It's only one residential unit that can be placed on it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the municipal clerk to call on the registered speakers.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have received 8 registered speakers for tonight's meeting, a combination of individuals joining virtually as well as in person. In no particular order, I'm going to call on the first speaker. It's Mark Fernandez. I believe Mr. Fernandez was asking to join virtually. We're just going to check to see if we have them on the call. Doesn't appear that way. So, Madam Mayor, I'm going to move on to the next speakers of the night. We have Praveen and Kanta Mistry. Again, I'm going to call for Praveen and Kanta Mistry. Okay, doesn't appear that we have them. Okay, so Madam Mayor, the next speaker that we have on the list is Brent.
Mr. Eustace.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, friends, neighbors, potential friends, neighbors, if there's anybody here that's actually owns that property. I'd like to say welcome. My question was to, I believe it was Scott, through Madam Mayor to Scott. I see you've proposed a road that seems extremely long for a driveway, and I'm wondering why it has to go, if you're wanting to change the environmental protection designation of the property, why don't you just change this, make it a very short driveway off McCowan and ruin the neighborhood, the forest right in that small area instead of going all the way through the forest to get to the rural area? That's my first question.
Madam Mayor, through you to our neighbor who asked that question, the area in blue that I highlighted is a regulated area by the LSRCA, and that area is a provincially significant wetland, and our choice is not to build a house in a wetland. Our choice is to build a home that has frontage on the road, as we proposed, that has, we believe, the most minimal environmental impact. So the question that the gentleman is asking is, we believe that that location is not the preferred location where we would like to build that house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe Brent had one question. I don't know if you have additional questions or comments.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I never did tell you what my name was. My name is Brent Eustace, and I live on Manor Ridge Trail. Again, through Madam Mayor to Scott, I am a little confused. If if you have to go through wetland with a driveway to get to the rural area, why is it you can't just build in the wetland? Thank you. And I promise I won't bother you anymore.
Thank you. No, that's just fine. Perhaps, I'm not sure if, Brad, you wanted to answer that question, and then I'm going to change it around a little bit, and we'll have all of the concerns first and then answer those questions.
Okay.
In
Thank you,
in
Madam
oil.
Mayor. And it's Brad Rogers. You might have got me confused with Scott Crones. I'm not sure. So the rural area and the rural zone that we showed you on the map does permit a dwelling anywhere in that rural zone. So our choice is to locate it where we located it versus the cost and the environmental impact of constructing a driveway that's 800 meters long through a provincially significant wetland.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker that we have on the list is Marilyn Chesky. Marilyn, are you with us today? All right. Moving down the list, we have Brenda.
Welcome. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Wanamaker, and I want to thank Madam Mayor and the councillors for letting me speak today. I am the author of the letter and the petition opposing the building of this house on Manor Ridge Trail, and I thought we did great work getting those signatures within 1 week and submitted to you. We feel this process is very rushed. These people making the proposal have been working on it for 2 years. Our notification was in early June, and so we have not had much time to rally to get more legal support. I did try an environmentalist, but I'm not sure if any of them are represented here because I don't know who all these people are. So we are concerned about lifting the environmental protection on the property for the new house that does not fit the mature neighborhood that we already have. And what is not showing on their map very closely is they are now coming even closer to the street than all the other homes on the street. I think there's a 15-meter requirement that they're also asking for to bring their driveway out. The house is, I think you said 4,000 square feet, and our concern is the houses on our street of the size they're proposing. There's very few of them of that size and with a 4-car garage. So we feel it's not a fit for our neighborhood. And we also feel that it is going to devalue our homes because this is a brand new one and ours are 20 years old, and it's a bigger house and I think a bigger presence on the street because it's closer to the street. So I had a few questions. I'm just trying to give my thoughts as I speak. Who is the landowner? All we are ever seeing is 22314. Are they not able to present themselves so that we could at least ask questions? We're going through an urban planner whose job is to develop. And I feel that the landowner should have their name somewhere in the information. And one of my concerns is, could this property, and I'm throwing out my questions, could this property get approved for a house and then become a right-of-way to go into the back rural area and let people develop in that way? Because they don't seem to be able to come in through Kennedy Road, which also backs on to this property. And there's a farm there, and we thought they might have access to come into the rural area so they could build a house there. I do not know. I'm surmising, so I'm just putting out my thoughts. And my question is, why does the house have to be built? 2 years have been spent on trying to get this house built. It's been environmentally protected for all the time that we've been on the street. I had to sign a legal document that I can't even cut a tree down on my own property to do anything on it unless it falls down. And so why can they cut down a half an acre or more just to put a house on? It just doesn't make sense to me. And could we have more time to get an environmental lawyer to support us so we could represent ourselves better in a council meeting? Because we're very new at this, and we don't want to be amateurish, but we do need more time. So I wanted to thank you again for hearing me, and I want to thank all our neighbors for coming to support us tonight. It's much appreciated to be able to speak today. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the next speaker is Marcia and Nima Gadari.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Nima Gadari. My family lives on Manor Ridge, adjacent to the subject property. It seems that the applicant is making this application in good faith. However, I'm worried that this decision will set a precedent, allowing more protected land to be rezoned in the near future. And it would be a shame to be remembered as the ones responsible for the continued loss of our wetlands, forests, and protected lands. And what will we leave behind for our children and their children? And I would like to appeal to your conscience that you don't take the consequences of your decision lightly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, the next speaker is Brian Finley.
Welcome. Good to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Clerk, and staff, and thank you for your time tonight. My name's Brian Finley. I'm an owner-resident on Manor Ridge Trail. My neighbors and I, share common stakeholder concerns with the proposed rezoning. Impact to our water supply, impact to our home values, impact to wildlife, impact to the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And so, on the topic of the groundwater, we're wondering, ministry standards require test wells to ensure adequate water supply. I guess I have a proposal that the town, use a vendor of record or tender to select an environmental assessment vendor and have the applicant reimburse the town. This will avoid a conflict of interest of having the applicant purchase, provide, and furnish an assessment in their favor. One question about, and I think it was answered, I had listed here, was does the proposal align with the town's subdivision plan? And I hear there are some exceptions, setbacks, sizing of the homes, those sorts of things. So maybe need some clarification in terms of, how those exceptions can be made when there's a plan. Also, if approved, does this set any kind of precedents for future rezoning or that sort of thing? And maybe some clarification around the notification. I think only 2 homes got a letter before all this happened, and as Brenda mentioned, we only got a couple of weeks' notice. So is there plans in the future to keep us more informed, maybe more frequent communication or communication on the matter? So thank you for your time and your commitment to constituents. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the last registered speaker of the night is Lorraine Waller.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
Welcome.
Oh,
Good
thank
to have you with us.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors, town staff, and fellow residents. So my name is Lorraine Waller. Thank you all for the opportunity to share my thoughts this evening. I've been a resident here in Sharon for the last 40 years, and I've enjoyed the rural landscape and the way of life. Recently, I've become concerned about the direction the town's been taking with respect to development. There are currently 63 active applications on the town website, and the one that we're talking about tonight concerns rezoning the green space. This is what concerns me. As it's been mentioned before, it is precedent setting, And there seems to be a pattern here. We've donated green space to the Bradford bypass. We've donated green space to the cell phone project, cell phone tower in Queensville. Like I say, there seems to be a pattern. So why are we designating green space if we don't protect it? We are the stewards of our land. And a couple of meetings ago, Councillor Carruthers did make a statement that we need to do more for the Indigenous community other than just utter land acknowledgements prior to gatherings. Well, here's a prime opportunity to do so. Respect the land by protecting it. Just last month, Council declared e.g. a climate emergency. How is relinquishing green space conducive to a climate emergency? I urge everyone to take a step back and consider the long-term consequences of current actions and how they will affect future generations of all life forms. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we currently do not have any additional registered speaker. However, given that some individuals didn't have a chance, I will call again on any individual that had registered previously if we've managed to get them on the call. We had Mark Fernandez, Praveen and Kanta Misty, okay. Marlene Chesky. And that sums it up, Madam Mayor. Over to you.
Thank you. I will ask anyone who has not had a chance to speak and would like to provide a comment to come to the podium and provide your name and your address. I also ask individuals who have not registered to speak or received notification to fill out the form outside and provide that to the municipal clerk as well. There are no others, so I'll proceed with the resolution. Be it resolved that Development Services Planning Branch Report DS 2023-26 dated June 20th, 2023, entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Groundswell Urban Planners, Inc., McCowan Road, file ZBA 2102 be received, and that the presentation, written and verbal comments made during the statutory public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendment Groundswell Urban Planners, Inc. 22314 McCowan Road, file ZBA 2102 be received, and that comments presented at the statutory public meeting be addressed by Development Services Planning Branch in a comprehensive report to a future committee of the whole meeting date. I wonder if I could have a mover. Councillor Roy DeClemente and a seconder, Councillor Johns. All those in favor? Can we speak to it? Yes, you certainly can. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was waiting for it to go on the floor.
And then I'll call the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a knot in my stomach thinking about taking environmentally protected land to build a home. But what I saw tonight with this presentation is there'd be far more damage if the home was built on the rural land, which they have every right to build on. So I'm hearing our residents saying for us to not approve this, and we're not approving it tonight for sure, but when I'm looking at this decision, I'm looking for any other solution that we could possibly have. I don't think that any of us take this lightly, and I hear from the person who just spoke about not taking this lightly. We don't take it lightly. We are looking for the least damage to the environment, but still operating within the rules that we are obligated to work under. Thank you.
Any other members of council wish to speak? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Roy DeClemente, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to be clear for those in, what next
Yes.
steps are.
Thank you.
For those in attendance, because when you say all in favor, there might be people here thinking we just voted on something to approve
We
something.
received all the presentations tonight with
Yes.
that last vote.
So the next step would be for staff and the applicant to work together and bring back recommendations, and the folks who've registered with the clerk would then be
Yes.
notified about next
Yes.
steps. Okay, thank you.
With that, we have concluded this portion of the meeting, and we're going to continue on with some other business. If you're welcome to stay, if you'd like to, but we're moving along to a different topic. We won't take any offense by you leaving. I'm now at item I, correspondence for consideration. And we have, number 1 is correspondence from T. Livingston, Mount Albertan District Lions Club dated June 5th, 2023, requesting council approval for 2023 Santa Claus Parade in Mount Albert on Saturday, December 2nd, 2023. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers. We are either declining or we're going to authorize it.
I was moving authorization.
You're voting for authorization.
You can't,
You don't want Santa?
you can't vote against Santa.
I was moving the first.
That's one, John.
I'll read the motion out. Be it resolved that the correspondence from T. Livingston, Mount Albertan District Lions Club dated June 5th, 2023, requesting council approval for the 2023 Santa Claus Parade in Mount Albert on December 2nd, 2023 be received, and that council authorize the execution of bylaw to temporarily close Albert Street from west of King Street north of Albert Street to Shannon Road from King Street to Victoria Street from Shannon Road to Mill Street, Center Street from Mill Street to Main Street from Center Street to Victoria Street for the purpose of holding the parade. And we don't want any rain this year. All those in favor? And that's unanimously carried. I knew there was a part there that said, or council respectfully declined the request, but I think there might have been some discussion about that. I have Development Services Memos Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application implementing bylaw Vietnamese Buddhist Zen Meditation Center 22093 Highway 48 file ZBA 2005 related files OPA 2003 and SPA 2113. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Crone. Be it resolved that the Development Services Memorandum dated June 20th, 2023, entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application implementing bylaw Vietnamese Buddhist Zen Meditation Center 22093 Highway 48 files ZBA 2005 related files OPA be received. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have no resolutions under K at this time. We have bylaws under L, bylaw 2023-049 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2018-043 as amended of part lot 31, concession 8, Township of East Gwillimbury, file ZBA 2005, and this is in relationship to item J1. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor LaHaye, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? And that's carried. Under M, there is no other business at this time, and a confirming bylaw, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-050 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council meeting held on June 20th, 2023 be taken as read, enacted, and signed by the mayor and municipal clerk. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Roy G. Clemente, Councillor Carruthers, all those in favor? And that's carried. And an adjournment at 7:04, moved by Councillor Johns, seconded by Councillor Carruthers. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, staff. Appreciate the evening. Thanks for all the support. And I think we're going to see that one back perhaps at a different time, or be very interesting to see.